Welcome, round versus flat Earth debate. I'm Tybo, and we are blessed to have these two lovely guests who have volunteered themselves for today's chat. We have Crystal Chris, who believes we live on a spinning globe, and allegedly Dave, who believes the alternative view, whereby we live on a flat, stationary plane. Whatever the shape and structure of our Earth, I think there is one thing we can all agree on, and that is regardless of its shape, we can all call her Mother Earth. Don't we? Are the flat believers deluded? Have they gone down the wrong path in that pesky rabbit hole? Have they been fooled like the QAnon lot?
Yeah.
Or have they seen through a lifelong indoctrination? Where down the rabbit hole is, once you go flat, you don't go back.
Flat mate! Flat mate!
I'm in the ring tonight, ding ding, only joking. No pressure, but if it does get heated, does your dad have to look at his dad?
I don't need my dad.
So I'm going to hand it over to first.
Me.
Crystal Chris.
Oh, thank you very much. Hello everybody, thank you for coming along. So some of you may be expecting a fiery debate, and for those I apologise, it's not going to be. It's going to be a couple of gents having a chat, sharing some views, and for my part, I want to really start this by saying I don't care what shape you think the Earth is. I really don't care. What I really think is, and the reason I took this challenge to come and have this conversation, was actually last year at this very festival. I gave a talk on astrology, one of my subjects. And a few folk walked out because they're flat earthers, and I was talking about globes and spheres and orbits and so on. And one of my friends came along, who's also a flat earther, but he stayed. And he told me the next morning that he defended me around the fire from his friends, who were a bit vitriolic, to be honest. And so I said, well, you and I have a chat. And unfortunately, he couldn't make it. And thankfully, this fine gentleman, Dave, decided to step into the breach. So very grateful for you to you for doing that. Thank you, Dave.
Shut up!
So that's made this debate possible. We now have the opportunity to have this chat. So I'm going to get right into it. We don't have that much time. We're going to have a little bit of time each. We did bring a talking stick to kind of show the demonstration that we don't need to interrupt each other and talk over, but having discussed it earlier, we're not even going to use it. But we've brought it to demonstrate that we don't need to use it, because we're just going to be gents. So, to my part, there are loads of things that I would like to say, but I don't have enough time, so I've picked some key points. The first point I've touched on already, and that's astrology. I've been an astrologer, studying it for a long time, all my adult life. It's been a very intriguing subject to me. It's given me an in-depth analysis of my own personality, my being, my future, and the world around me. I use it as one of my key tools. As somebody who's studied esoteric mysticism and the myths and religions and faiths of this world for a long time. I was raised in a religious cult who told me what they said was the truth. And it wasn't. It was a lot of rubbish. And that led me to a point where I was able to get out of the indoctrination and learn a beautiful thing called critical thinking. Don't take somebody else's opinion and adopt it as your own. Look, dig in, be like Toto the dog, pull back the curtain, see who's pulling the levers. So that's what I do. And I have researched a number of subjects and got to the point where I'm sure, like many of you, you feel like you understand it enough to share a bit with other people. So, astrology. Astrology works on a basis of orbits. We can use mathematics, which doesn't lie and doesn't have opinions. We can use math to work out the orbit. We can work out when we're going to have, for example, Halley's Comet coming round again. We know when it's coming. That's all based on the orbital process. We can also see that we have a thing called the precession of the equinoxes. A number of you may have been aware of this coming of a new age. And we're getting into the age of Aquarius. Well, if you believe we're getting into the age of Aquarius, then you believe in a round Earth, because it's completely to do with the orbit and the spin of a globe. A globe that, just like a spinning top that we spin, and once it loses a bit of pace, it starts to come off momentum. That's what the Earth is doing. We have all the ancestors. If the flat Earth be true, then every single stone circle builder, the builders of the ancient megaliths, the builders of the pyramids. Every single one of them is in on this scheme to tell you. Because as far as I can see, when I go to these sacred sites, these magical places, which have the mathematical calculations of the size of the planet, the shape of the planet, the orbit of the planet, all of these things. We look in astrology up in the sky and we see the movement of the planets, which is a word that's based on, well, the meaning of the word planet means wanderer. We have the backdrop of the rest of our constellation, which to our view doesn't move, and the wanderers, the planets, step across those that are also orbiting around our central sun. Why do those in the far distance stay the same? Well, that's because we're all orbiting around the centre of the galaxy at the same speed. So let's say we have a big 1,000-lane motorway and we're all going in the same direction, and you're in lane 1 over there, and I'm in lane 1,000 over here, and you're travelling at 70 miles an hour, and so am I, and we look at each other. Well, you're stationary to me. That's what it is. That's what's happening. And inside that car, you could have a little fly that's travelling at 70 miles an hour that can fly off the back of the chair and fly forward and land on the dashboard, because it's relative to where it is, to the plane that it's on. Our planet is spinning around the sun, spinning at a pace, and the evidence of that is in the ability that we have to decipher when equinoxes, when solstices, when we're going to have eclipses, when we're going to have comets returning, all of these things. We look out into space. In fact, we can see it as we go from the macro to the micro. We can see things coalescing. You go into water, a dense medium, and put air. Like molecules of air, what does it do? It condenses into the easiest shape so that the pressure is equal all around. There are two shapes that do that, sphere and the vector equilibrium, which is almost like a football. So it's spherical as well, but the faces of football, you can look it up. It means every vector point is the same pressure as every other. And equal pressure is exactly what nature will do. And that's why bubbles of air and water are spherical, because the pressure is equal on all sides. So as we have spinning things in space, things coalesce together, and you end up with objects that will gather together and be spherical. Now, I said about the age of Aquarius, touched on that. I'm going to go a little bit further into the ancient stuff about the standing stones in a minute, but I know I don't have much time. Another thing I want to talk about is the Schumann resonance. There's a lot of people think that there's a vibrational rise for spirituality on the planet that's in relation to the Schumann resonance. Well, actually, the Schumann resonance proves that we live on a globe. Because the Schumann resonance is a measurement of the space between two spheres and the resonance, the frequency of that cavity. And a professor in the 1950s, Schumann, who had gone to America at the end of the Second World War and then went back to Germany and was working at the Max Planck Institute, he decided to ask his students to work out what the resonant cavity was between two spheres. Now we can see this on a plasma sphere. You know those ones where there's a sphere inside a bigger glass one and there's lightning jumping across the gap and you touch the outside and it connects and you get that lightning print of your hand or your fingertip. So if we used his equations, we would be able to get the resonant cavity between those, the frequency between those two spheres. But he didn't have one of them. So what he got his students to use was the Earth's surface and the ionosphere. So those are the two spheres. And because we're electromagnetic, the planet's electromagnetic, they were able to figure out the extremely low frequency resonant waves that came between those. And they came up with a rough answer, and then him, one of his top students, refined it and came up with 7.83 hertz. So when you see lightning happening out there, that is exactly what we see in a plasma ball happening on a global scale. Lightning is a demonstration of that plasma, of that electrical field, and of us being in a space between these two spheres. And just on that point, as I say, the Schumann resonance rising is about pollution. It's not about vibrational rises. All the stuff with your mobile phones and 5G, 4G, all that stuff. So, megaliths, standing stones. Alexander Thom was a Scottishman from Ayrshire who was an engineer. A very, very good engineer, actually. He built the engineering college at Oxford and the building is named after him now. In his private time, he liked to go and visit standing stones. And he took his equipment with him and he measured them all. and he just stored the raw data. Many years later, he wrote a very highbrow intellectual book that I've tried to read and understand, and I can't say that I do. Some of it, of course, and thankfully others have translated it for us lesser minds. But what he did was he found through his calculation that there was a measurement in the standing stones of the UK, the Northern Isles of Scotland, Shetland, right down to Carnac in northern France. And this measure is a unique measure that comes across all of those. You can find it in these stone circles that are aligned to the rising sun in the east. Everything rises in the eastern horizon because of the way our Earth spins. And so, what he did was he put out the details of this measurement, and the community around him, the general scientific community, to this day, have pooed all over it. They said, no, you weren't an archaeologist, and you're not an anthropologist, and you're an engineer, you just stick to that, mate. Because the implications of what he said was, the archaeologist says, well, it couldn't be, because this sacred measure would, through Chinese whispers, would change over time, and it's so accurate, it couldn't happen. And the anthropologist said, if this was something that was so big in their society, it would be used in other parts. Well, some researchers have used that, have gone into that and gone to try and see if they can reverse engineer it, and they were successful. They used the techniques which I can show people afterwards, but I don't have time. I'll draw it out and explain it to you if you wish, to work out exactly what this measure was and how they could achieve it with the tools that the Stone Age people would have, which was sticks and string and a pendulum and their own paces. And they divided a circle, and they used the transit of Venus, a planet, coming through 1 degree of arc around the planet to work out their measure. Because they thought what the ancestors didn't have television, so they would use what they watched up in the sky. And the things moving across the backdrop of the stars would give them a measure based on the relative spin of the Earth. So they came up with this measurement, they worked it out. I'm not going to go into all the details, it's a lot of maths, but I can explain it to anybody who wants to know. And the measure that they found was fascinating. They took this measurement, which turns out to be 2.722 feet in our modern measure, which he dubbed the megalithic yard. And if you take that measure, with the method that these guys discovered, it's one that's now, you can measure it in Orkney, you can measure it in France, and everywhere in between, so there's no Chinese whispers. And with the anthropologists getting into the culture, well, they took that measure and they divided it into subdivisions and played around with it. And 1/10 of that, when you make a cube, and you fill that cube with any liquid, is an imperial pint. The imperial system is lost to the mists of time, they don't know where it comes from. And if you pour that liquid out and pour in a grain, it's exactly a pound. And if you multiply that up, you get quarts, you get larger measures. It is the origins of the imperial system. And an ancient measurement which comes directly from the spin of the Earth. And no other thing. So, I could go into it on a number of things like the auroras. Why are there auroras on both sides? We have an electromagnetic sphere. The electrical field coming out creates an aurora on the North Pole. If that's true in the South Pole, why can we see the aurora? Is it such a huge aurora that it rolls up round the side of a flat Earth? Why is that? The auroras happen on a sphere, on a toroidal sphere, which is the electromagnetic field of the Earth. One of our good friends, and he's friends of a few people here, is an ex-sniper in the British military who's woke up, and I spoke to him at length a few weeks ago about the Coriolis effect, which they have to adjust for. What that means is when you're firing a bullet over long range, you have to adjust for the spin of the Earth for the trajectory of your bullet. I'll try to keep a straight face when you're saying your silly points.
I'm trying.
Now, there is a famous experiment which I actually tried to get done in the last month, but thanks to the bloody British weather, there's been too much cloud. But if anybody wants to do it, find somebody in the north of Scotland, get someone in the south of England, which I did. 2 sticks, the same measurement, 3 metres long, 2 metres, whatever you want, stick them up at the middle of the day at noon, and get somebody to put the spirit level to make sure it's vertical on a flat surface and measure the length of the shadow, and get somebody to do it in Orkney or Shetland, and the one in Shetland will be longer because it's further up. Now, just interestingly, that measurement of 2.722 feet, it doesn't work any south of Brittany because it's on the wrong part of the Earth. Once you go down that far, you need to take new measurements. So, my final section, and this is actually the crux of my argument. These other ones, well, it's just points, believe me, it doesn't matter. This one, this is my core. So I've been awake and aware since 9/11, 2001. The world fell apart. I remember telling my wife at the time, the world has changed. I was on the phone in my office. You know, those who were alive then, you'll remember where you were at that time. Well, I remember where I was that morning. And I knew the world had changed. And because of my background that I've mentioned earlier, well, I went digging. And I looked at 9/11 and loose change and all that melting gold and how Building 7 fell down and how it was turning to dust and, you know, these nuclear power things and whatever they were doing with the thermite and all that stuff. And I was down the rabbit hole. And not many of you were there. It was a lonely place. By crikey, were we glad when 2020 came and all the rest of you woke up and it was a much more lively event. But here's the thing, right? In 2011, I was on a bunch of forums across the internet which were super lively. And we were doing stuff. We were looking at Tesla coils, free energy, orgone devices. We were looking at collective living, off-grid, biodiesel. How can we harvest energy from the infinitesimal spaces around us? We had a guy on one of the forums that I was on. He was the one that outed Jimmy Savile. I was on that forum. I saw it happen. And in 2011, we were full steam ahead. And in 2012, which was one of the years that Obama was president in America, look this up, 3 times in that year in his presidential addresses, he directly referenced the Flat Earth Society and conspiracy theorists. And as a fully fledged badge-wearing conspiracy theorist at that time, I can tell you, before 2012, there wasn't a whiff of it. There wasn't a mention of it. Not a person mentioned the Flat Earth. And in 2012, he said it 3 times in his presidential debates, nipping them together. And then on YouTube, I started seeing videos coming up in that little recommended for you section. That powerful little strip at the side of nudging. And I kept seeing these videos for the Flat Earth, and I'm like, why am I seeing that? I never looked for that. I'm looking at Comet Elenin coming in 2011, if anyone remembers that. I'm looking at all that stuff. Why am I getting this? So I researched, why does this happen? It's called nudging. YouTube make a bloody fortune off it. You can, as a business or a corporation or 3-letter alphabet agency, you can pay them money and nudge your stuff to the top of the list. And the very first one was actually Russian made, which is interesting. And it was called Where Did All the Trees Go? And it was the slickest video I've ever seen that was supposed to come out of some guy's bedroom, which is what it's claimed. And so I watched it and I looked at it. And then I saw the movement that I was so proud of being part of disintegrate, fall apart. Literally, as I watched around, I saw people who were making Tesla coils together fall out over a huge divisive issue. And this is the one. And this is the reason I'm willing to be here and talk to you all today. I don't care what you think it is. Think it's a donut. You can think it's a triangle. What I do know is an animist who believes everything is animated from the grass below us to the planet under our feet. As Mother Earth doesn't give a shit what shape we think it is. She's the shape she is, just like an ant or a termite or one of those little mites that lives on your eyelashes. They don't determine your shape. We do. And she determines her shape. And this issue that's been raised, I don't know how close I am to 15 minutes.
You're about 4 minutes over it.
Am I? Yeah. Oh, thank you very much. You should have given me a nudge, Dave. What a gentleman, thank you. You can have at the same time, mate. But yeah, just to conclude, I'm not here to change your mind. I don't care. I really don't. But what I want is community. If we all believe the same thing, we'd be like robots, and that's what they're like. They believe in the same thing. I want you to have a different opinion from me. Challenge me. But do me a favour, look it up. Don't just watch a YouTube video. Get the old books out, go and dig, understand, meditate on the subject, and don't suffer from positive bias, where you only look at the good things that support what you believe in. Look at the ones that don't. Challenge it. If you really want to believe something, go and try and prove it's wrong. But don't just do it on a surface skim and look at somebody else's video and try to prove it wrong. Do it yourself. And if you want to talk about that, I'm happy to talk.
Hello everyone. I'm Dave. So I got into Flat Earth because I was a amateur scientist at the time. I was like, I'd listened to all science lectures and I'd been reading books about it and everything. I was a total science geek, into space and everything. right? Just like everyone, pretty much. We went to school and we were told, you live on a ball, okay? They brought out the globe and they said, you live here. And the age we were, right, we couldn't argue. We couldn't say anything about it. It was like, okay, yeah, that's it. Most people, well, maybe most people don't know that up until the age of 6 or 7, right, anything you learn becomes your reality, okay? And it's very difficult to shift that reality once it's been programmed, okay? We're all programmed into this worldview. Our senses tell us we live on a flat, motionless plane. You know, go down the beach, right? Look out, you'll see it's flat, right? If you don't believe it, get a sign, right, on the beach that's leveled and just match up the bottom of the sign to the horizon and you'll see it's perfectly flat, okay? So your senses tell you it's flat. You don't feel like you're moving at nearly 1,000 miles an hour right now, do you? No. Anybody? Bueller? No? Okay. Right, no, because your senses tell you, right, you're on a flat, motionless plane, right? For me, the simplest explanation is the truth, okay? And the simple explanation is we live on a flat, motionless plane, right? So how I got into it, around about 2014, the summer of 2014, I saw a YouTube video. Now, it wasn't a flat earth YouTube video. It was a video talking about experiments. And I love a good experiment. So this was the Bedford Levels experiment. And what came out of it was the curvature calculation that tells you, you know, if you look at a landmark a certain distance away, how much the Earth's physical curvature should hide that landmark. I thought, over 6 miles, it's something like 25 feet. And I thought, hang on a minute, that must make the Earth really small. So I checked it. I drew the Earth up in AutoCAD, okay, and tested it. And sure enough, the 8 inches per mile squared formula worked out just about right. So I went down to Plymouth Hoe, right? And from Plymouth Hoe, from the beach, there's a lighthouse 12 miles out. Now, according to the calculation, right, with the camera about a foot above the water, right, your horizon is about 1.3 miles away, okay? The lighthouse should have been hidden by about the first 32 feet, should have been gone, right? Physically hidden by the curvature of the Earth. So I went down there with my camera, zoomed into the lighthouse. I could see the water, where the water met the rocks at the bottom of the lighthouse, right? I could see the whole thing. But beyond that, I could see the horizon behind the lighthouse. Now, you know, that told me, well, something fishy's going on. So I started asking, you know, scientists, physicists, whatever, what's going on? I can see more than I'm supposed to. Yeah, the physical curve of the Earth should be hiding that lighthouse. And I got things like, oh, it's refraction. Well, first of all, it was Earth's gravity was bending the light around the curve. Yeah, that was the first one. And this happens a lot. You come up with something and you get a kind of knee-jerk reaction, a knee-jerk sort of theory, and then you destroy that theory, and then they come up with something else. Okay, so first of all, gravity. That didn't work out. Okay. Because there's too many questions with that. The next one was refraction, like saying that the light is also bending around the curvature. But the point is, the horizon should have been 1.3 miles away, so in front of the lighthouse. So how can a lighthouse be refracted over the horizon and place the horizon way back behind the lighthouse? So that the refraction idea out of the water as well, okay? And, you know, they haven't come up with anything else since then, okay? Now, I've been doing debates and discussions with people, and, you know, I've spoken to particle physicists, astrophysicists, you know, you name it, I've spoke to them, and every time I've got them, you know, sputtering, right? Because they haven't got an answer for me. Okay, and how can a stupid bloke from Basildon, right? Stand up against a particle physicist and make him go, I don't know, right? Because the very simple answer to our cosmology is the Earth's flat. Every time we come across a different subject, there's a different answer, a different explanation. We only have one explanation, right? And again, when I say there's a different explanation, there's several different explanations, right? There's one after the other after we start debunking them, and we roundly debunk them. A lot of the time I go on an aircraft, and whenever I go flying places, I speak to the pilots, okay? And I go in and pretend to be a normal muggle, and I say, okay, have you ever noticed the curvature? Half the pilots say, yes, I've noticed curvature. The other half say, no, I haven't. And I say that to those who've seen the curvature, well, according to physics, Neil deGrasse Tyson, if anyone knows who he is, he says you can't see curvature even from 110,000 feet, okay? Planes fly at 35,000 feet. So physics says you can't see the curvature, but half the pilots say they see it, the other half don't say they don't. I asked some questions about, okay, if you're flying straight and level over a curved Earth, you're going to be gaining altitude all the time. If you're going at 600 miles an hour, after an hour, you'll be 45 miles higher than you were to start with. So those pilots have to correct. They have to bring the nose down to go around the curve. And none of them do that, right? Now, somebody actually came up with the killer mic drop answer to this, right? He found a time-lapse video from a pilot who basically was flying into the night sky, and he kept a camera going for 3,000 miles, okay? And you can look at two stars, keep two stars in your field of view, and you can watch over 3,000 miles, those stars kind of rotate up and off to the right, okay? The thing that's missing, though, is the fact the stars should have started going upwards as he goes over the curve, but they don't. They stay absolutely where they are, but they start rotating around, right? No pilots correct for the curvature. None. Doesn't happen, okay? There's so much I could go through, it's just unbelievable. But this idea of we're spinning, okay? So what they tell us is that, you don't feel the spin because you move around at, 1 revolution a day. Now that sounds pretty slow, doesn't it? 1 revolution a day, right? Now, imagine you're on a little roundabout, kids' roundabout, yeah? And that's 8 feet across. If you're standing on the edge of that roundabout, if it's going round once a day, yeah, once every 24 hours, then it'll be moving at 3/16 of an inch an hour. So you won't notice it, right? You'll have to look really closely to see it moving. Now let's imagine it's a mile wide, okay? And now if you're on the edge of that roundabout, now it's moving at 2.2 inches a minute. So it's like this, okay? If that roundabout was 4,000 or 8,000 miles wide, going around once a day, it'll be going at 1,000 miles an hour. If you were on that roundabout, you'd be flung off, yeah? Now we know that, our intuition tells us that's right. Yeah, has anybody been on the waltzer at the fair? Yeah? Anybody? Hello? Hello, anybody out there? Okay. If you're on the waltzer, right, the guys running the thing in the middle, they're hardly moving and they can walk around and do everything. As they walk out to the outside, it gets difficult for them. They have to hang on to stuff, yeah? Is that right? Yeah. Right? So imagine if he keeps walking on a larger one, it'll get harder and harder to hang on. That's our actual experience. And they're saying, it doesn't count, even though it's still only going round once every 24 hours. Am I making sense here? Yeah? That's what I meant. Flat earther.
You've got a pal.
Yeah, so
What's his time?
literally, sorry.
I'm just asking how close the time is.
Actually, I'm coming up to the time now. Okay. No, it's all right. I'll let. That's all I'm saying. I'm an ordinary, simple bloke, really. Okay. Just like you, before I found the flat Earth, which isn't a psyop, because I wasn't nudged. I wasn't nudged when I saw it. I watched an experiment, and it wasn't even a flat Earth experiment. Okay. And because it's at the time there was nobody else talking about it. This was 2014, so I don't know about 2012. I didn't hear anything back then. But 2014, there was nobody speaking about it. I think there was one guy, Eric Dubay. Yeah, but one guy, nobody else. And, if you try to bring it up to anybody, you get laughed out of the room, okay? But I stuck with it because I saw that there's no curvature. And I've been doing experiments all around the world. I did a laser experiment across Lake Balaton in Hungary. We had a professional laser. We shot it across the water. And we sped across the lake on a speedboat with a board on the back to catch the beam. Right? And that beam didn't sort of go up in the air. It stayed level over 20 miles. Right? I've done sighting experiments on Lake Bonneville Salt Flats. I've done experiments from a hot air balloon in Albuquerque. I've been all over the place doing experiments. I haven't found any curvature, any sign of the flat Earth. There is no experiments you can do that will prove the round Earth. Right? There aren't, not a single one. And all the things you mentioned about astronomy, well, it all works on flat Earth too. The only thing that's different, the maths works out. The only thing that's different are the assumptions that are made, but these maths are based on. Right? The assumption they make is the stars are millions and trillions of miles away. Yeah, and if you get the right sort of combination of numbers, your maths will work out, and yeah, it sounds right. But it also work out if the stars were a lot closer, right? Just like, and I think you mentioned as well. Experiments. There's an experiment by somebody called Eratosthenes, right, where he had two sticks, one in Alexandria and one in Syene, and on the same day, one didn't have a shadow, the other one did have a shadow. Yeah. Now, here's the thing: the same experiment will work on a flat Earth if the sun is only 3,000 miles away. Okay, work exactly the same way. The only assumption, the difference is the assumption on how far the sun is. And throughout history, the sun has been different distances away from the Earth. It's only recently that it's 93 million miles. Yeah? I don't have the list, but there's about 8 different numbers for where the stars, the sun is. But anyway, I'm going past my time, so that's it.
Thank you, James. I did my best not to raise too many eyebrows.
Love you both.
Love you too. So, I'm going to directly respond to a couple of your points. You did have a little cursory flick at some of my points. But I'm going to go in a little bit further, and I'm going to actually expand, which is a good word for one of the points I'm going to talk about. I'm going to expand on that a little bit. So, this thing about movement, and you don't feel like you're moving at 1,000 miles an hour. If we got on a bullet train in Japan and you're sitting there moving at hundreds of miles an hour, you're sitting in the carriage and you want to go for a pee or you want to go and get a drink, do you feel like you're moving? You maybe rattling a little bit, but do you feel like you're moving at hundreds of miles an hour? Do you feel sitting on the motorway when it's a very smooth road, one of those freshly tarmac roads, and you've got a nice new car, do you feel like you're going at 80 miles an hour when you're going a bit over the speed limit? Yes. No, you didn't. You're in a car. When there's, okay, so here's the thing, right? Look inside the car. Let's get a little fly. I mentioned it earlier. That fly in that car sitting there is moving relative to that car. The car's its plane. It's sitting in there, it can get up and fly forward because the speed of the car is irrelevant. The atmospheric pressure inside that area is what gives it that. and allows it to fly. So that fly, if you're travelling at 70 miles an hour and it travels at 5, it's now travelling at 75. It's now travelling at 75 miles an hour. So there are loads of things. Now, there was spoken about an experiment, we spoke about light refraction. Now we can literally take a sphere. We could do it this evening. We'll get a sphere, and we'll get a light, and we'll shine it up to it, and we'll put it close, and we'll put a bit of card behind it, and you can watch the light refraction. You can look at it. You can see it going round that. Light does refract. Now, if we're on a flat plane, I do have one simple question. Why can't I see the top of Everest for you? Why can't I see the top of Everest? Why can't I see the Alps? Why can't I see them? If it's a flat plane, right, and the sun I've just been told is 3,000 miles away, right, how far away are the Alps? Because they're less than 3,000 miles, and why can't I see them? Why can't I see them? It's a flat plane. Why can't I? No, well, show me. Show me how high up, which will take into account curvature. Why can't I see Everest? Answer me that. Now, my next point. Spoke about a roundabout, which is a flat thing that you're on. It's completely different to being on a huge object that's spinning, that has a gravitational pull, making things coalesce. We have a really strange planet. We dig down deep and find these ancient artifacts that they call ooparks, if you've ever seen them, out-of-place artifacts. Find these ancient things showing us that our ancestors knew stuff. They've hidden many, many things. I don't necessarily think it's some great cabal that did it long ago in the past. My view is it was the church. The church wanted the power, so they couldn't have any other power step in. You had to be on a planet at the centre of the universe, a geocentric universe. That's why Galileo and others were castigated. When they discovered that it was heliocentric and had to hide that from the norm at the time. Here we are. To me, see, as I said earlier, I'm a searcher of ultimate truth. And to me, ultimate truth stays the same. Right? An opinion can come this way, and we don't believe it at all, and we're very against it, and then we can, and then we really like it, and you must believe it, and if you don't believe it, we're going to kill you. And then they don't believe it again. But ultimate truth, it just stays the same. It just stays the same. And that's the shape of Mother Earth, it just stays the same. Now, with regard to size, it's really interesting, because I'm actually really interested in the expanding Earth theory and the hollow Earth theory, because I don't believe what the majority of scientists today say, because they generally work for a corporation or organisation who's paying them what to say. However, that doesn't mean to say that I'm going to throw the baby out with the bathwater, because I can't speak to you on this. You wouldn't hear me in an amplified way unless science. So if you want to throw all the baby out of the bathwater, go ahead, but I'm not doing that, because I'll still speak to you on your mobile phone. I'll still record this on my phone. Thank you, science. Right? Science does that stuff. Just because we've woken up to this fact, this understanding that there is an elite group who are trying to screw us over and they're using means to do so, it doesn't mean to say we have to throw everything away. Now, use your own mind. Don't listen to others, and please stop watching bloody YouTube videos. Go out and get the books. It's all out there. There's nothing new on this earth. It's all in the past. It's all in the past. History gives you all the answers. Now, I mentioned the ancestors, and that's a point I was quite late responding to. Our ancestors built the sacred sites that we all go to, and I go to. I love them. They feel amazing, do wonderful things. You can go in there, we can test it. There's very, very good energy in these spots. And many, many people go and have a fantastic experience. Why would that be the people that hate us? That want us dead? That want to inject us? Why would they do that? Why would they build stuff that's helpful to us? Why? And why would they use the shape of the planet to work that out? Why? It just doesn't make sense. There is no sense in it. Now, we can say, well, the truth of it is because we live in a flat plane. No, well, what if it's an expanding Earth? What if the Earth, like suns, because we see them expanding and you get red giants, etc. So what if the Earth is expanding and it's growing and growing and growing? What if that's the case? And so some earlier calculations would now be defunct and you would need to measure it again. And when they made the metric system, The metric system, of course, using the curvature of the Earth, the meter. I'll tell you an interesting thing about the meter. Right? The meter was created by a French duo who used the polar curvature of the Earth, and they divided it into 40,000 pieces, 40 million pieces. I think that was the number, and that's your meter. And 40,000 kilometres. Right? That's what it is. So, all the breakdown of measurements that we use came from using that, and you can do the same analysis. And interestingly, from what I told you about the megalithic yard, here's our ancient imperial system, also coming from a curvature of the Earth experiment. If the sun is 3,000 miles away and the moon is 3,000 miles away, then again, why can't I see the Alps? Why can't I see Mount Everest? Well, sure, I've never seen it. There's no long-range photographs that I've seen from here. You can't see it. So, because, well, I've not seen anybody explain that. I've not seen anybody explain that. Now, I want to go back to the PSYOP thing, because I said this is my key point, and you saw I got passionate there. I'm not giving you second-hand information. I was there. If you didn't see it in 2012, maybe your eyes were elsewhere, but mine were there. Mine were there, and I was in the core of that unit. I was making orgone devices. I've made tens of thousands of them and gifted them around the world. That's where I was. My passion was in there, and we were looking at all sorts of stuff. And I watched and was in the groups that fell apart. I witnessed it. And I know what caused it. I'm telling you now. I'm not making it up. You know, put one of your lie detector tests on. The thing that caused it, the thing that was the catalyst, that drove the wedge between all these groups and stopped them in their tracks in many cases, was this issue. This is the only issue that I've seen in recent years that is so aggressive. I've had people come up to my stall knowing that I'm talking this, being proper angry, wanting to make sure that I learned this truth, make sure that I understood this. Well, I hope you know, and I hope you feel today that I'm no preacher, man. I might have grown up in a cult, but I ain't going to preach to you. You think what you like, and I'll defend your right to have that opinion, because I think you should. But what I want is you to defend my right to have my opinion as well. And if we all do that, no matter our circumstances, no matter our thoughts and beliefs, and we support each other, because really, you know, if we take this subject out and make it something else, it's just we support different football teams, isn't it? Yeah? Right? It's just that's all it is, right? But we can still go for a beer. You know, we can still have a spraff under the sunshine in a field with friends, you know? That's the key. Genuinely, I couldn't care what you think. And I really, truly believe Mother Earth doesn't care. And I hope, Dave, you've had a nice experience not talking to a scientist, but a crazy wizard who gets in touch with Mother Earth and speaks to her and passes on her opinion. I don't know if I've got... How am I doing for time? Is it back to you? Well, with grace, my friend. There you go. Thank you.
Right, well, to speak to the division thing, right, well, there's been a lot of things that divide us. Lots of things, yeah? And, you know, COVID was one of them. COVID split families in half. COVID did everything, you know, split everybody apart.
So you see how effective it is then?
Into, you know, jabbed and unjabbed. Yeah, pretty much, right? Trump did in America especially, okay? It literally almost caused a civil war over there. So you can't just label, you know, flat Earth as divisive. There's lots and lots and lots of things that are divisive. Yeah, and as I said, I don't believe it was put out there, because the things that I've seen aren't put out there. They just are. Yeah, you can't find curvature. End of story. You mentioned about being on a train, okay, and not feeling that you're moving. Yeah, that's fine. If you're going in a straight line at a constant speed, no, you won't feel like you're moving. You add a bit of a curvature in there, and yes, you do. You'll be thrown to one side. Just like if you're in a car going at 50 miles an hour, and then you make a turn, right? You're going to be thrown to the other side of the car, right? Yeah. So it's called circular velocity. Yeah. So orbital velocity. I can't remember. Yeah. No, there's a word. There's a special word for it. I can't remember what it is. But literally, motion, constant speed in a circle is acceleration. It's acceleration in different directions. Okay. And we detect we detect acceleration. Even the slightest bit of acceleration, we detect it. Now, you're standing on an Earth, you're not going in a straight line at constant velocity, you're going in a circle at constant velocity. So you'll feel acceleration in different directions. So no, that argument doesn't wash. The idea of you can't see the Alps, right? You can't see Mount Everest. Well, you don't see infinitely far, right? We see in a kind of pyramid shape. Okay, so if you're in a long corridor, right, a long straight corridor that goes on for a mile, yeah, you'll see the walls will start to move into the centre. You'll see the ceiling come down, right, and the ground go up to what they call the vanishing point of your vision. Anything beyond your vanishing point, you can't see. It's gone, okay? And as far as the Alps are concerned, actually, yes, you can see the Alps. Right, a photograph came up just recently from a mountain in Wales called Yr Wydaffa, okay? And on the horizon, you can see the Alps plain as day. You can identify each mountain, okay? Now, Mont Blanc is actually 700 miles away from Yr Wydaffa, yeah? And you can see it plain as day. 700 miles means those mountains should be behind the curvature by 48 miles. Should be 48 miles behind the curvature. But you can see it from the top of this mountain in Wales, yeah? He also mentioned gravity makes things coalesce. I think you started on a point about trying to debunk, this idea that we're spinning at 1,000 miles an hour and we should be flung off. But you only mentioned that gravity makes things coalesce. Okay, well, you've got gravity. Let's go for your model. You've got gravity holding things in, but you've also apparently got the spin of the Earth, right? And Neil deGrasse Tyson says, right, the Earth is an oblate spheroid.
He won't debate Eric Dubay, will he?
No, he won't. Won't debate me either. So, yeah, apparently he calls it an oblate spheroid, a sort of flattened football, okay? Because the spin is making the sides bulge out. If that's the case, why is there land at the equator? Because water moves more readily than rock. So, if the rock is bulging, the water should bulge at the equator. So all the water should be collected around the equator. There should not be any land at the equator. Should there? Anyone? Hello? Okay. Yes. Okay, everyone's gone to sleep. Right. The other thing that was mentioned, that the Earth was the centre of the universe, right? As in the old conception. Well, it turns out in the new conception, experiments have shown, right? They're trying to hide it. They're not going to admit it, but experiments have shown that the Earth is in the centre of the universe. Right, it's called the cosmic microwave background radiation. Right, and they've done this experiment several times, and each time it shows that there's this axis around the Earth, around which the whole universe spins, and it goes directly through this Earth. Okay, it's called the axis of evil because they don't want to admit that that's what's happening. But according to mainstream science, even though they won't admit it, the Earth is the centre of the universe. Okay. The other thing, you also mentioned about science creating all this stuff. No, it didn't. Science didn't create all this technology. We did. Yeah? People, right, usually going against the scientific, thoughts of the day, right, came up with technology. They came up with things, inventions, right? And science basically changed to sort of catch up. Right? Science is not responsible for this. We are. Right? The last thing I've got really is the so this expanding Earth. Well, there's no evidence for an expanding Earth. If it was expanding, the continents would be going past, away from each other, and we'd notice it. But I will say, there was an explorer, James Cook, who circumnavigated Antarctica. Okay, he was trying to find a way into that continent, So he literally went all the way around Antarctica. It took him 3 years. And he sailed for 60,000 miles. Now think of it. The circumference of the Earth is 25,000 miles. But he went round that little continent on the bottom of the ball, and it took him 60,000 miles. There's no explanation for that unless we're on a flat, motionless plane, yeah? And literally the Antarctica is the shoreline of our Earth, and it's much bigger than the equator, okay? Now, just as a, I don't know how much time we've got, well, just to expand on my view of the Earth, okay? So, most people have seen the flat Earth model. It's like a little pond, okay, with islands sticking out. There's a bigger picture though, okay? If you imagine a large lake, right, that's frozen over, right? And in one corner, right, a heat source is going round, melting out a puddle. And in that puddle, there are little islands in that, in that puddle. That's our Earth, right? The sun is going around a magnetic centre, right? And it's melting out a puddle in a larger frozen wasteland, basically, okay? But the sun is going around this magnetic centre, and this magnetic centre is slowly moving around the greater Earth, melting out a different puddle as it goes along, right? So, certain continents go under the ice as the sun moves away from it, and new continents come out from under the ice. And what we're finding is, it seems, that there are already cities built on these continents that appear, right? Now, if you imagine, right, these continents were under ice before, right? Suddenly the ice melts. Well, that water's got to go somewhere. So it stirs up the mud and the silt, and as the water drains away, the silt sort of settles at a different level, which is why we're finding cities that we didn't build, really, right, that are semi-submerged. So you'll see buildings that have windows at ground level, and you can see that the windows disappear under the ground. And then when they dig them out, they find whole floors with windows and doors down at that level. I literally just went round Glasgow, and I literally saw all these buildings, all these massive buildings with, windows underground. Okay, so yes, we've got a larger Earth. It's not expanding. We've got a larger Earth, but our Earth is changing all the time, and our maps are wrong. Our maps are totally wrong. They're at least, or they could be, 2,000 years out of date. Okay, very quickly, the proof is, very quickly, the proof is, our maps have the Tropic of Cancer and a Tropic of Capricorn, right? Well, that's only because during the age of Aries was the sign that came up when it was the solstices, I think. Aries, the solstice, and if you look at the zodiac wheel, then there was the other one at the bottom. But the two equinoxes were Capricorn and Cancer. But we've not been in Aries for more than 2,000 years, right? So we've been in Pisces. No, Pisces. So,
coming up to the age of Aquarius, though.
well, we're coming up, but the point is, before the age of Aquarius, we're in the age of Pisces. So those two tropics should have been, I think it's Sagittarius and Scorpio. So was it Gemini? I can't remember which one it is. I'm not astrology guy.
I'll explain it in a minute.
Yeah. So yes. Anyway, there's more to it, and yeah. Sorry, I'm just rambling here now. Thank you.
Throw your nickels, throw your nickels.
Okay, so I'm going to explain the tropics first because that's an important point. And I just quickly touch on scientists. When I said science, what I mean is people. People are scientists. You mentioned James Cook, an explorer, gaining understanding and knowledge, scientist. You do experiments, you're a scientist. That's science. You make something, that's science. So this doesn't need to be the regime, this doesn't need to be the cabal science who's wanting to direct us. This is just ordinary people making things to help our lives. And so it is science. It's scientists. It's people working in these fields who learn these skills and they are called scientists. That's what it is. So it's not science, it's not this great thing, you know, which is clearly what we're saying. But to explain the tropics, right, so clearly explain the tropics. You have, in fact, where's my board? Is it there? Yeah. I'll use this. Okay. So, we have, thank you. Yeah. Now, we have the equator, North Pole and South Pole. Now, if we look at the wheel of the year, and you can see this, by the way, if you look at on ancient maps, look at old maps, you will see a sine wave on the map, right? You can Google it now, old world map, you'll see that's what sine wave. And you'll see at the top of this map, a marker point that goes all the way around the Earth, right? And that's the Tropic of Cancer, right? So that's Cancer. And that one is Capricorn, right? So, if we look at the religions of the world, and we look at Christianity with the cross and the circle, look what I've just drawn, the top of all the churches. This is actually a depiction, the story of Jesus, in my understanding, is the story of the wheel of the sun going through the year. This ancient story that we've been told, this ancient science that we were told around the fire after the last cataclysm when our world was wiped out, and the evidence that you've been talking about with these mud floods. If we were the survivors now and no one else, and all these skill sets lost, and we're all sat around the fire talking about the world that we just lost, we would think, how are we going to tell people the great understandings in science? Well, let's make it a story, we'll tell it around the fire. We'll turn it into allegorical tales. And so the story of the sun, the story of the Son of Man who shines his light upon our path, and we would be screwed if we didn't rise every day. Yeah, we would, because we need that sun. It's written in this great tale. So the astrological tale, if you look at this path, we have the spring equinox, right, the start of the year. And as we go into the northern hemisphere, the sun comes higher up. So you're getting more sun in the daylight. You know, you look at the south in the winter, it just comes low in the sky. And in the summer, it's really high in the sky, right? So the highest point that it comes is when we have the astrological wheel of the year with the 12 sections of the zodiac, where you've got Aries, Taurus, Gemini, and then this one here, when you come to that point, the highest point, this point, the highest point, is Cancer, right? And then you come all the way down, that's Libra, down here, and this one here, once you get to the lowest point, there, it's Capricorn, right? So that explains what the tropics is. That's why we've got the tropics of Cancer. It's completely to do with the elevation of the sun based on the Earth's spin at 23.5 degrees. And as it spins and it orbits round the year, in that solar year, where the sun gets a year older, I don't necessarily believe we get a year older. That's what that is. I don't know what you were saying.
What these two do?
So this is, what I've done is I've shown the horizontal plane, which shows the equinoxes. And in relation to the path of the sun, if you're standing, staring at the eastern horizon on the spring equinox, the traditional start of the year in the ancient world, which was changed by the Cabal and they made it January the 1st. We look at the start, at the spring equinox, traditional start of the year, looking to the east. Where does the Sphinx face? To the east. West Kent at Long Barrow faces east. Right, loads of them. There's two, but you can see all the rest of them. They face east, because that's where everything rises. And at the start of the year, they're coming up over the horizon. So that's that point there. Right, and then we come through the spring, first 3 months, and we get to the summer solstice, the high point, and then you come down into the summer itself, the advent of the summer, and then you get the dog days of summer in there when Sirius rises, which we can calculate because we know it's spinning around the globe. And then you come down to an equinox again, where you're looking to the western horizon at sunset, and the sun will set exactly west, just like it did at the equinox, at the spring equinox. And then at the winter solstice, we'll see it set high in the north and rise high in the north. So that's what this is demonstrating. And these ancient religions are based on this, like fundamentals. Your life is based on astrology. Why are we in the year 2023? Because it's 2023, the age of Pisces. This great age of Pisces, which was ruled, the story of the Son of Man in the age of Pisces the avatar for that is Jesus, and he's the fisher of men. You look at the born-again Christians' cars, you see a fish on the back. They took the second fish out, his twin brother. They took him out in the mystery schools a few hundred years ago. But if you look before, the age before that, the age of Aries, there was a guy in the same region called Mithra, born on the 25th of December. 12 disciples, because there's 12 constellations, just like the Knights of the Round Table, 12 of them. Right? These are all these ancient tales telling us this ancient story, telling us about science, telling us these things that we need as this understanding. And here we have the Cabal today using this spinner of a tactic, this psyop of a tactic, to try and take us away from this ancient knowledge. And it's really clever. You go to a debate in some university and listen for the first 15 minutes to one person, and you'll be convinced. And then you listen to the next 15 minutes to the other person saying the opposite, you'll be convinced. So these ploys, we mentioned, thank you, you can take that away, thank you very much, man. We mentioned about how it's divisive and how loads of things are divisive. But the truth of the matter is, this has been divisive to its core from its inception. And right at its inception is where it caused a huge rift in the awakened group. I was in it. Like, I was there. There's people I can connect you to who'll tell you the same story. And I watched it disintegrate with this subject. It didn't disintegrate with division from some other subject. And yes, there's division elsewhere. But division is a very effective tactic. I went into a bookstore in Glastonbury a few months after making the plan last year to have this discussion this year. And I saw it well in the bookshop in Glastonbury. A person go up and ask the guy, "Do you have any books on the Flatheads?" He said, "No, I don't." So he left. So I took a wander over and said, "Listen, I'm doing a discussion with someone next year, and I'm quite interested. Can you tell me, has a lot of people come in recently?" And asked. And he stiffened. And he said, "You know, this is the only subject that I've had somebody come in here and tell me, because I've got astrology books, that I'm fronting the Cabal and that they should burn them." Book burning. Book burning. Do you remember the last time there was book burning? It's ridiculous. And the division in this should not be just overstepped and cast in with division. And certainly not offset the division in society that was created by them 3 years ago. That is not effective for this. It was highly effective for them, but this division that we have, it has to be addressed. As I said right at the very start, the only reason I'm here is because of that. I don't know everybody here, I know quite a few. And for the rest of you, you're just a friend I've not met yet. And I don't care, I genuinely don't care what you think about this. There are certain subjects where, of course, if you believe a certain thing, but that's morality, then I'm not going to be your pal. But in other stuff, I defend your right. But also, I love the art of sharing and having these conversations around the fireside, sitting around the grandfather fire, which we'll be doing later on tonight down in the Healing Land if anybody wants to come. Bring a guitar and your drum.
Hello, Steve. We've got a person who wants
That? No. Well, let me just make a point actually on that. This discussion is set up specifically to be us two on stage talking. We're not passing the microphone to the audience because last year that's what caused issues. We're going into the Q&A shortly, and you ain't getting the mic. You can ask a question which we'll relay out. So it's not, please, it's not about opinions. If you want a point raised, if you want something discussed, ask one of us to answer it, and we'll answer it. This is a reasoned man. He might have raised his eyebrow. No, I'm sorry, you need to wait. Please let us finish, do it our way. You'll get a chance to ask a question, but just a question. If you want to come and speak to us after. No, mate, please don't. Right, no, mate, I just don't want you to do it, please, because we're not letting anybody else, even if you're backing me up, I think it's just fair. This is the way we set it out for us, because neither of us are argumentative men. We sat in the chat earlier on. I've enjoyed listening to your words, Dave. I disagree with a lot of them, and I'm sure there are many other subjects that we could sit and we could really agree on. And probably you'll find that there's more that we agree on than disagree.
Absolutely.
But I've enjoyed the discussion with you. I really have. I appreciate it. I thank you all for listening. We are going to be open to questions just after I finish this, but please be aware, don't start shouting at opinions and doing all that stuff. You'll spoil it.
Oh, yeah.
It's not about that, right? If you've got a specific thing that we've not covered so far and you want to get us to talk about it, ask a question. And if you've got an angry point of view, please keep it behind your teeth. We're not interested in that anymore. Yeah. So, for me, thank you very much. Obviously, Dave's going to do his little wrap up, but thank you, love you all. Come round and fire away.
Okay. Well, first of all, I don't know any flat earther that matches the description of the people that you say that broke up, these groups. The anger that I've noticed comes from ball earthers. Yeah. When I start talking about flat earth, I get, almost violence. I've had somebody throw me out of his house and want to fight me. Just because I started talking about flat Earth. I talk to lots of people. I used to talk to a lot of people about this subject, the only, it doesn't come out from me. I don't get angry. I don't get annoyed at people because I was where they were. At one point, I believed what they believed, right? So, and also, I'm not really into trying to convince anybody, right? The whole point of this life is that you discover it. You figure it. I can't convince anybody of anything. You have to convince yourself. That's it. Okay. Now, all I want to finish off with is the why. The why of this story. 500 years ago, a bloodline, right, the bloodline that is in charge right now, took over this earth. Okay. Period we call the Renaissance. Okay. And at that time, all these new things came in, right, which is essentially all bullshit. So the English language was created 500 years ago, okay? The English language is a mathematically created language of deception. And it's actually two languages in one. One for your conscious mind and one for your subconscious mind, okay? So they brought that in. They brought in this idea of the ball earth 500 years ago, okay? The reason they've brought this in, right, is because if you combine the ball earth with the theory of evolution and the Big Bang theory, it reduces you to a speck of dust or a microbe on a speck of dust, right, hurling through an uncaring, accidental universe, right? It removes any purpose from your life, any meaning to your life, because it's just an accident. And there are trillions and trillions of other specks of dust and lots of other microbes on them. So you mean nothing. It's the only way a small group of people can control a much larger group of people, right? Is to psychologically weaken them, right? That way, right, they can give you a purpose. If you knew that you are the chief of the Most High's creations, and you have a purpose in this world, right? Solely because of the fact that you're unique. You are unique because only you see through your eyes. Only you have your viewpoint on the world here and now. Good. Yeah? So you are unique and you have a purpose. But they've been able to psychologically weaken us so that they could give us a purpose. And their purpose is get good grades at school, get a good job, right? Make money, buy lots of crap, buy bigger, faster crap, yeah, and then repeat and rinse until you're dead. That's it. That's the purpose they've given us. And we've only accepted it because we've believed this idea that we're accidental, ape descendant creatures that don't have a purpose. But again, what I found when I found the flat earth was I saw the Most High's fingerprints on the dome. Right? And that showed me that, no, we're here for a reason. Right? And that spurred me on to find out what that reason was. Okay? And it's not religious. It's not religious at all. The Old Testament isn't a religious book. It's not a religious book. It's a story book. And the story hasn't ended yet. Yeah? So yeah, that's the reason for this, and there is so much more to this life. Imagine all the things you've found out over the last several years. Yeah, think about the viewpoint of a muggle out there who doesn't know any of it. Yeah? How much richer is your life knowing more about this life? Yeah? How much richer would it be if you knew that, you know, you are the pinnacle of creation here, right? And you've got a purpose. Anyway, that's all I'll say. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, Dave, you talked about Plymouth and the lighthouse, and that gave me memories. I used to be in the Royal Navy, and I sailed out of Plymouth Sound and Plymouth Hull, and I was a radio operator. And I used to do Morse code, flashing light, okay, to ships at a distance. So we used to communicate by, you know,
What's the question?
The question is, okay, as they went over the horizon, okay, they disappeared. Okay. Yeah, we could see the light at a distance. Once the ship got too far away from us, we could not see the other ships, so we could not communicate. So where did those ships go?
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure I can talk about that really, but the point is that we've got lighthouses, right, that can be seen.
That's,
right?
that's not the question of lighthouse. I'm saying, where did the ships go?
Well,
I couldn't see the
you're
light.
on water, okay, which is moving, okay. Now, because that water's moving, right?
It was flat. It was flat.
Water's flat.
No, there was no waves.
No
No
waves.
waves, yeah. On the distance, yeah.
Okay, and what was the distance? You know?
Well, I don't know. As soon as they went,
Again.
as they got further away,
Again. This piece of paper, right, at this height, will hide. If I hold it like this, if I was looking at a mountain over there, this piece of paper will hide the mountain, right? Because it's close and it's at my eye level. Yeah, it will hide the mountain, which is much taller than me, you know, 1,000 feet high and whatever, right? A wave, right, that's close to you, that's quite large, will hide something a lot further away. It's difficult because over water, it's moving, right? And,
Wouldn't it come in and out of you then?
oh, yes, it would.
yeah. But the question is, do you know, if we can see the sun at whatever distance you tell me that is, that's direct line of sight.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can see that. But if it's direct line of sight.
The difference is the sun, let's say the sun is 3,000 miles
I'm not
up.
saying you're wrong. I just want to know where they
Sure.
went.
But you know, because I'm seeing other experiments with lasers across water, a flat lake, so we know there's no waves and stuff. We're doing experiments with mirrors reflecting the sun right at the water's edge. Yeah.
This
Yes.
wasn't with mirrors on the water edge. This was me on a ship and another ship in the distance. Where did that ship go?
As I said,
Right, okay.
I can't answer it because there's so many factors.
Thank you, Dave.
Our next question. What's your name? What's your name? Steve.
Right, first off, man.
Just a question, Steve. Just a question.
Right, have you seen a bunting around the room?
Yeah.
Yeah. Has anybody noticed a bunting?
Yeah. Stop.
No, it's flat and round. It's sequential, right? So one doesn't work without the other. It's beautiful to look at. Do you know what I mean? And to debate about. So when you said about the
What's your question, man? You need to ask a question.
My question is the sign behind you. Have you seen the sign behind you? Carrying camping.
Yeah.
And the sun that's in the middle, right? So a graphic. Is anybody a graphic?
What's the question? Question. Come to the point.
It's a vector to a vector, right?
Right.
But when you rotate it by 1 degree, it becomes something else. And if you show something else and something else and something else, so the flat can
So
be a globe at the
Right.
same
Okay.
time.
I get your question. Yeah.
Sorry.
Have we got anybody who has a quick question?
Tati.
Do you want to
Tati.
come?
How do you explain the horizon being horizontal? There is no horizontal on the globe.
Okay. Well, okay, so I get what you're meaning. If you got an object that's a cylinder that from one side it looks like. No, yeah, no, I'm just using a 3D example. right? You have an object like a cylinder, like a can, and you shine a light on one side and it creates a circle of a shadow. And go to the other side and it creates a rectangle, right? I get what you're saying, but I don't really see that that's the truth. And I referenced that, I actually addressed this point earlier on. And that point is, Mother Earth is so big, and she is a consciousness, and she doesn't give a shit what we think. So we can think it's flat and think it's spherical. She is what she is, and she's not flipping between the two. She's not both. I do not agree with this, we all create our own reality. I actually believe that that is an expression of a thing which is called solipsism. Can we turn this down a little bit? Which is called solipsism. And that's a worldview that's actually extremely detrimental to us as a collective. Because in solipsism, you are the centre of the universe, and you. Let me explain my point, because you've led me on to something. So I want to use your question to respond to this. Solipsism is a worldview of way of looking out, where you are the centre. Your truth is your truth. You provide the ultimate truth. You get the downloads, and it doesn't matter what experiments other people have done. You just decide it for yourself. And that creates these divas that we see all as teenagers these days, expecting everything to be done for them, and it creates division, because it creates individuality rather than groupthink. It separates and divides us and sticks us in individual houses on our own, rather than bringing us around the collective fire and sharing ideas. So solipsism and things that bring that about, that manifestation, that singularity worldview, is a very difficult thing, and it really doesn't work well for us. And the flat earth view is very much of that ilk, that it's my universe, here we are, this going back to this geocentric central place. We spoke about the gravity potentially pulling us in, as I said, and about being on a roundabout and being thrown off by centrifugal force. Well, if that centrifugal force is offset by a force that pulls you towards something, then you ain't going to get thrown off into space. We can see that in experiments. Now, as regards to seeing the horizon, light is a really interesting thing, and it reflects. We have many stories, like one we've just heard, as much as it was supposed to be a question, about what happened to the ship when it goes over the horizon. Now, if the sun is 3,000 miles away and it's within my vanishing point range, right, so I can still see it, and it hasn't vanished because there's no a corridor of things. There's no a corridor between here and Mount Everest. So there's no vanishing point on that. There are so many holes in this. So many holes, it's like Swiss cheese. Your question was about the horizon.
How do you explain the horizon?
So, yeah, very simply. Imagine this as an analogy, right? We are tiny little mites, and we're living on the side of a mountain, and we're so small that our world is contained in just a little lump of stone on that mountainside. We are so small that sitting on that stone, all we can see is this flat surface reaching out to the edge. We weren't aware that we're on the side of a mountain, and all this other terrain is there, because our view, our perspective is so small. And if you look at your size in comparison to Mother Earth, you are tiny, you are infinitesimally small, and therefore looking out on that distance, it's going to look flat. Of course it's going to look flat. It's going to look flat in every direction that we look, because we're on such a small point. Now, that's my answer. I can't go any deeper, but what I do want to do is go to a third question.
Well, can I answer that one as well?
Can you explain the shape of the rainbow then? If the Earth is circular.
Can I explain the shape of a rainbow if the Earth is circular?
Refraction.
Yeah, refraction. I remember standing up at the top of a mountain. Do you know what, what did you call it? It's like a ghost I can't remember what it's called. It'll come to me in a second. So I was on the top of a mountain, and I was actually above the cloud. And so there was rain below me, and the sun was shining on me and my group of friends, and our shadow was cast down onto the rain below and through some rain. And so it's called a spectre. That's what it's called, a spectre, right? And it created this spectral image of us, of our shadow, which looked like this massive being, and it had this spherical image, right, all the way around it, right, because it's shining down on us, and we are on a round object, and as that light goes through, the Earth's atmosphere, it comes down like that. The light from the sun shining through droplets of water on a flat object, if these droplets are in the air, I would surmise that they're going to end up in a straight line. Whereas if you've got a round object, you're going to get a curve. But ultimately, I don't really know, because the points for me, that as I discussed earlier on, particularly the PSYOP one, all these things, I don't really give a shit.
Just keeps you guys busy.
What he said, it just keeps people busy. I refer it all back to my original point. But anyway, Dave needs a chance.
Yeah. I'll just say about the rainbow. Okay, if you actually try and create a rainbow, yeah, shine a light through some water mist, yeah, you won't create it unless you've got a mirror.
Yeah,
like you need a reflective surface behind it to create the rainbow. What's creating what's that reflective surface? We're saying it's a dome. Okay. The other thing is like we've seen like thunder. Like, where does thunder come from, for instance? Okay. Have anyone seen those big cooling towers? Yeah. Somebody burst a balloon in that cooling tower and got thunder. That little crack made thunder in that cooling tower. And it's just like in a dome, yeah. That crack of lightning, right, caused that echoing off the dome, yeah. So anyway, I'll leave it there.
I'd like to say one thing. Isn't it ironic that you get a flat Earth and then you have to put a hemisphere on it and create a dome? Just a thought. Anyway, next question.
Nathan's asked what's behind the ice wall, is that right?
Can I say one?
No, we're getting straight to questions.
Either way, you're both flat earthers, whatever, I don't mind. I love the fact that you can turn around and say, like, each their own opinion. You're having some debate. It's massively missing in our society that we're allowed to have different opinions about our religion. So I respect that. But the ice wall, what we're told in TV and film, subliminal, to tell you the truth.
You want to go first, Dave?
Behind the ice wall.
Right, so as far as we know, right, you've got a 200-foot wall of ice, followed by about 300 miles of ice desert, yeah, and then 2-mile-high mountains, called the Rockefeller Mountains, by the way, yeah. And there was a guy, Admiral Byrd, who actually took a couple of expeditions, 3 expeditions over there, and one of the films he brought back shows places with warm water lakes and mountains that aren't covered with ice, okay? And it was totally uninhabited, but there's more land, okay? But, you know, after Admiral Byrd came back, Antarctica was locked off for us. We're not allowed to go beyond, I think it's the 6-year parallel, 6-year south parallel. We're not allowed to go past that, otherwise you get turned around by the military. In fact, there's a video you can go and watch of a group of lads in a fishing boat. They went, let's go to the ice shelf. Right? They headed off to the ice shelf, and a destroyer pulled up and headed them off and said, "Turn around, or we're gonna open fire on you." Yeah. So no, we're not allowed to go. Why aren't we allowed to go to that continent? Right? Because the answers are there.
So I watched a podcast just last week of a young guy, 25-year-old, walked across the Antarctic, did the solo mission where he was pulling it without using a kite, so he did it all himself. So you are allowed there, you just need a shit ton of money. And you need to not try sailing across the waters without getting international permission, otherwise they're going to aim and fire at you. But you can't get there. What's behind the ice wall? More ice. More ice. Let me finish, I'm going to answer his question. And I've already answered one for you, sorry. I know, but let me answer his. So, my understanding of this is, and I'll talk about the Admiral Byrd thing, because actually that Admiral Byrd thing points, for me, more to an understanding of a hollow earth, rather than this land beyond on some mythical flat plane. It was referenced earlier that the earth was, this sphere earth was created 500 years ago in the Renaissance. The standing stones that I go and see, and the stuff that grows on them that takes a long, long time, was more than 500 years ago, and that all proves it's a globe as well, so I can't see that. But behind the ice wall, well, my understanding is what Admiral Byrd saw was an access potentially to the inner earth. There's a really interesting story about a Norwegian guy. I can't remember if his name's Nicolson or something like that, but you can find it on the internet. There's a story of a sailor whose dad had found walrus tusks on an island in the Arctic one summer when the ice was thin, and they went up, and the dad came back. The son hadn't been allowed to go because he was too young. He came back in the winter with this great crop, and the son said, "Can I go next year?" So they went with him next year. His dad decided to take him, and they went through the ice, and they had some strange happenings because they ended up in this water. It got less icy. They were going through these big crashing ice shelves that were, opening up little channels that they could sail through and then crashing back together. It was a really dangerous time. And then they came into water, they're like, it's warmer. This is strange. And the sun's at an odd angle. And wait a minute, there's another light. And another light, look at that. And the further they go, the less they can see this one, and the more they can see this one. And then, from what he describes it, is they've sailed around the edge of the earth and come down into an interior hollow earth, which is a fascinating story. And he talks about going to Agartha and all the cities there, and then speaking to them at the end of a year and saying, we want to go home. I've got my mother, and she's lost her husband and son now. And so they can't put them, a year later they can't put them back out, or however long it is, because the winter's there in the north, so they put them out in the south. And as they try to get out, the dad dies, and he ends up stuck on an iceberg, and he's rescued by some Scottish fishermen. And he ends up in a psychiatric home. When he gets home, he tells his uncle that his dad's in the inner earth and he wants to go and get back. And so, I'm more inclined to say what's over the other side of the ice, the access to the inner earth. But, I don't know. I see a hand waving up there for a question. Do you wanna...
I think that's the story to journey to the centre of the earth. I think I saw that. Yeah.
Well, they do say, all that truth that's hidden there.
Like a statement and a question. The statement was like, last night looking out to the west, there was like flashes of light every 2 or 5 minutes, and we believe it's like Harriet Waddington, something really bizarre. Did anyone else see that at all? Yeah. Anyway, so these flashing lights, we don't know what they are, communicating with aliens or something like that. I'd like to know a bit more about that. Okay, that was my statement. The question is about nautical miles. So you know that a nautical mile is like a mile at sea level, but like in planes and stuff like that, it's meant to be like, it's different whatever altitude you are, and wherever they go on the earth, it's always consistent. Can you explain that? Dave?
Can I explain that?
Good question.
No. But what I do know is there's a number that keeps popping up when you look at the globe. A very particular number, yeah? So, I don't know. Sorry?
What is it?
The number is 666. Okay, so the Earth is going around the Sun at 66,600 miles an hour. Yeah, the curvature of the Earth over a mile is like 0.666 feet. We're tilting at 23.4 degrees, which leaves 66.6 degrees. Yeah, and there's a lot of them that are based on knots, nautical miles instead of miles. So if you look into it, you find that number keeps popping up, including, I think, gravity. Yeah.
All right, let me respond to that then.
Okay.
So I told you earlier, I've studied the mysticism and all that. There's 3 things you learn in mysticism: astrology, tarot, and numerology. So this is another one of my wheelhouses. Thank you. 666 is a 3-numbered trilogy. The power of 3, say things 3 times, and you're going to set it in stone. It's actually a complete misnomer that 666 is a negative number. Go and read the book of Revelation again, and that, where it says the number of beast, it's 606. 606. Bit louder for the back, yes. Right, so the actual number of the beast is 606. And if you want to go to Roslin in Scotland, which is very close to the home of Scottish Rite Freemasonry, which I've also studied, and I like to teach Freemasons a bit whenever I meet them. You go to Roslin, which is the home of Freemasonry in that part of Scotland. By the way, I was born in Edinburgh on the Roseline. This is my home. And you go to Roslin and go to the Masonic Hall there. And you would think, because Masonic Hall number 0 is in Edinburgh. The original was out in Kilwinning in Ayrshire. And that's now Well, that number 1 is Edinburgh, 0 is Kilwinning. So you would think that Roslin, one of the big places that the Templars and that had as their strongholds, would get a good number. Well, it took them a long time, because the Lord's number in Roslin is 606. So, all the other numbers, the sacred geometry numbers, as Tesla told us, if we understood the magic within the 3, 6 and the 9. The 3 is a magical trilogy, 3 3s, 3 6s, 3 9s. This is actually the misnomer of one of these things that the Cabal do to try and twist the truth, to twist the understanding. 13 is an extremely lucky number, but they've told us it's unlucky. Why? Why is Friday the 13th? Because Friday the 13th, 1307 is when King Philip of France put an end to the Knights Templar, and so the Cabal put that as a negative date. And it's also a Friday, which is a feminine day, and another way to screw over the feminine side, the Venus side.
Right.
So that's the answer to that. And as regards, actually, just one wee point, we talk about navigational miles. It's really interesting understanding you can come to with latitude and longitude. It's quite easy if you believe that you're on a globe to figure out what the latitude is. But what about the longitude? Well, hundreds of years ago, when they were sailing, before they had good clocks, they would use a thing called dead reckoning. And they would look at the stars and try and figure out where they are based on the sky. So they used that as their means of travel. And they actually, there was a prize, a competition put out, that I think in today's money you'd earned about 6 million quid. And this guy created this watch, this chronometer. And if you know how far away New York is around the sphere, you know the distance, you can calculate with the spin of the Earth how long that'll take to get to the same point that you're at, so you'll know what time so then at the same time of day effectively, because that's when the sun's at that point. Like if you're at noon, how long is it going to take New York to get to that noon point in their sky, and you know how far west you're going. And so this guy created a chronometer that to this day is one of the most accurate clocks in the world. You get a new, very expensive watch today, and even if you're spending a few grand, within a couple of weeks it's out of time slightly. His watch did not go out of time. Go and have a look. Go and look at the history. And the guy who won the competition to figure out how we know how to go around the world that way. Know that way.
Can we have next question?
Yes, we can.
Luke's got a question. Why can't we see so far? Why can we see so far?
Why can we see so far?
I can see the bottom of the lighthouse. I can see the horizon.
Well, you know, it's really interesting. Again, there's a multiple experiments that you can see. There was a fascinating one of the few that I've watched online, about a group of flat earthers who went to a lake and used the laser level.
No, she's been specific.
Yeah, I know.
How can she see that far?
Yeah, I know. Well, I can only give you the response. I can only give you the response based on what I've seen, and I don't watch much in the way of YouTube, but I did have it forced on me. And then when I watched, it was actually quite funny because the laser was actually higher than they suspected it to be, which actually showed the curvature of the Earth, which is really interesting. You can go to a beach on the west coast of England, where you can see there's some wind turbines out, those horrible things that they've got a few miles out to shore. Right, you go and look at them. I think I can't remember exactly where, but I'll get the details because I've got the information saved if you want it. Let me just finish this. So in going there and looking at that, you can see the ones closer, because there's two fields, the ones closer you can see the bottom half of the pillars. The ones further away, you can't. Right?
But I'm not talking about that.
No, but
I can see that the bottom of the lighthouse is 9 miles away from my position on the beach.
Earth calculator says.
So if the Earth is expanded, then maybe you can. And as I said to you, as I said to you, I have seen. So ultimately, I have seen those things for myself. I've gone and looked at the shore, and I've watched those things. I've seen it for myself. You can go and see something and make your own decision and choice out of the information that you have, based on what others have told you, and I'll defend your right to have it. But
that's not what I asked.
I know you asked me a question, and I answered it with my information. I wasn't standing next to you that day, so I didn't see it. So I can't argue with you about that. If we go together and stand there and we do some other experiments together, happily discuss them. But I can't speak about it on your hearsay because I wasn't there. So I can't give you an opinion on that. I can only tell you what you've raised, at the point that you've raised. I look at my reserves of knowledge and I answer it that way. You know, because if I answered it any other way, I would be making it up. So the only way to do your question justice is to be honest.
I would have said it was fairly straightforward about that.
It's a fairly straightforward question, but I wasn't standing with you, and my understandings that relate to the question that you've just asked is the answer that I've given, and that's why I gave it.
If the Earth is expanding, then surely all of the maths that you refer to is incorrect anyway.
Well, just to finish on that one, I actually, if I was going to say anything, I would go for a hollow earth rather than expanding. I use that as an example, as an illustration of my willingness to look at many theories and show that I'm not closed-minded and sticking to just one theory and throwing the rest out. I'm willing to have a look at things, and I did look at the flat earth. I did look at all that, but based on the gravitas of the information that I found at the time, specifically personal. You know, you belief is experiential. You believe something because you experience it. I could tell you I saw a UFO, you go, yeah, that's a crazy guy, he's a hippie, you know, maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But if you experience it, doesn't matter what I say, you believe it. That's your experience. I know, but mate, I love numbers, and I'll talk about maths all day long. Numbers are beautiful things to me. However, I have seen, yeah, but I wasn't there. I've not measured that lighthouse. I don't have the information that you have, and so I can only respond to the way your question, what your point is raised by the question that you give. I can only use my understanding to answer that, which is why I did. I can answer it in my own way. Yeah.
Next question.
The Earth's flat. No, this was an example of you had, actual experience. I've had actual experience doing the experiment, and you countered with, I watched a YouTube video.
No, I have literally done the experiment myself. I went to the west coast of England and saw it. But I also saw an experiment with a failed flat tube, flat earth one on your.
So I'll just go to that. That experiment, what you saw, came from a documentary, right, which was made as a hit piece. Okay, and you can actually go to the website of the guy who was in that documentary, Jeranism, and he'll say, yes, they cherry picked just little pieces to make it look like our experiment failed.
Can I respond to that?
Well, there's no response.
I appreciate that. So, I give my understanding from my experience, and I don't pull it from other people's. And I've been on the west coast of this country and looked at wind farms, and from my experience, it shows me the curvature of the earth. So you see one object, I see two groups. Go to the west coast of England and see that, and then talk to me. That'll be interesting.
I want to ask a question, quick one.
Next question's for Lee.
Hi.
Hello.
I'd like you both to explain, please, how we in Europe, if we want to travel to New Zealand or Australia, we have a choice of two directions to go in, and we can arrive at the same point. So we can fly either via the Middle East and Asia and arrive in Australia or New Zealand, or we can fly in the complete opposite direction via the States and arrive at the same point. I'd just like you both to explain. That's irrelevant.
Oh, wait a minute, mate. You're not answering, mate. Sorry, mate.
Right, so for your specific question, I mean, it's difficult. I'd have to see the actual routes and stuff. But yes, the same things work on a flat Earth as on the ball. Okay, east and west are just circles around the North Pole. Okay, one direction or another. Okay, but the interesting question would be, why is it that in order to fly, when you fly in the southern hemisphere, right, most flights take you all the way up into the northern hemisphere, then back down into the southern, yeah, on a ball. But when you look at the same flight on a flat Earth, it's a straight line. So there's a book that's come out just recently that's something like 32 emergency landings, right? And it goes through all these emergency landings where they're flying, they're taking off, and somebody has a baby or something, and they have to land at an emergency location, and they land in totally weird places, right? Thousands of miles off their route. But when again you look at it on a flat Earth, it's a straight line. It's obvious they'd have to divert there. Okay, and this book has got loads of examples of that. Right, so I can't answer your specific question because I don't know the actual route, and I can, I'll look at it and plot it on a flat Earth, and I'll be able to explain it to you. But yeah, the more interesting question is, why do we get these deviations on a round Earth when you see it on a flat Earth, it's a straight line?
Thank you. So, my understanding is because it's a sphere and they're flying in opposite directions to get to a point on the other side of the ball.
But it works.
Next question.
Sit down, sir.
Well, you know.
Claire. So we've got Claire's question.
So going back to what you were talking about earlier, about Nathan's question and the ice wall, do you think beyond that could be, from your point of view, being flat Earth, do you think beyond that could be the end of the Earth, edge of the Earth, and that's why nobody's allowed beyond it?
Thank you. Yes, actually, because okay, so one of Admiral Byrd's expeditions, he took a military group with loads of planes, okay, and when he came back, he ended these expedition early. When he came back, he only had half the planes. Right? The entry for Antarctica in the Encyclopedia Americana for that year, right, it said under Antarctica there's a dome at 13,000 feet. You can go and look for it yourself. You know, Antarctica, flat waste with a dome at 13,000 feet. Right, so again, if it's on the edge of the dome, that's where, you know, it'd be much lower there. Okay, so I think he took those planes out there and he kept crashing into something. And in fact, there's a amateur rocket you can go and watch. It's called the Go Faster rocket. Okay, it was in 2014. They launched this amateur rocket up, right, 73 miles. It was going really fast. It was spinning. Sorry?
It's a firmament and it comes back down.
Yes, it's going really fast, spinning really wildly, and all of a sudden it goes dunk, and it falls back to Earth.
Yeah.
So something stopped that forward motion, stopped that spinning, right, and the thing fell back to Earth. Incidentally, just as another point, in that footage, you can see the moon in that footage. Right? This took up from New Mexico. And at that time, the moon was on the other side of the Earth over Australia. But at 73 miles up, they could see the moon. Yeah? So, no, the moon wasn't on the other side of the planet. It was visible over flat Earth.
So that question wasn't asked at me, but I am looking at the time, and we've gone over.
Oh.
Yeah. So I think that's a nice point to draw this to a conclusion. I'm sure you've all got some other thoughts, discussions, ideas and questions. Well, that's for the fireside later. Please do come down. You're more than welcome. Don't come down if you're angry, please. I'll just walk away. I would like to have some nice conversations. I'm happy to do that. And you're all more than welcome. And we might even sing you a song or two if you come down. But you got to be nice. Thank you, Dave, for having a really nice conversation. Really appreciate that. You're showing your views. And ultimately, what we hope that Dave and myself have demonstrated to you today, you can take away not a new belief about the shape of the earth, but a new understanding that we can all still love each other, despite having a difference of opinions. Let's get rid of the division, the divisiveness. Let's love each other and respect each other, and let's make sure that we defend others' rights to be different from us. Thank you.
Thank you.